coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast.
What is going on, everybody? I swear to God, Dan, last time my intro did that, it cut for 3 minutes. What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I am your host, as always, Coach Steve. We have a very special addition to our Fantasy Coaches Podcast. As I told you guys on Monday, we would have a second episode this week to talk about the Senior Bowl. And I brought my good friend Dan in, who was all the way down there watching all these players. And we're going to talk about some risers and fallers today. So let me introduce Dan. What is going on today, man?
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to kind of do my post-Senior Bowl media tour. This is my third show this week. Random people reaching out, have me on. Before we get into anything, I just want to say Jim Nagy, Molly Middleton, and the entire staff that run the Senior Bowl, they do an amazing job. I recommend anybody listening who's even considering one day going, just make it happen. It's a hands-on event. I had a media pass, which gave me a little bit more access to the players. But if you don't have a media pass and you're just a fan, it's a great event to go to, stand shoulder to shoulder with football fans from all over the country. And everybody's just super, super nice. We're just all there to talk ball at the end of the day.
Yes, I was very jealous when you said you were going. I'm like, oh, man, I want to go so bad.
Next year.
Maybe next year. That's the goal. So, like I said, you were down there. How was the atmosphere being down there for the Senior Bowl in general sense? Talking to the players and all that. How was that experience for you? Because I think, is this your first time going down?
This was my first year going. We had a very interesting week. I heard somebody joking that we had an entire NFL season in those 3 days. Tuesday, it was 77 and sunny. Everyone got farmer's tans and just terribly burnt. Wednesday, we had 56, partially cloudy. And then on Thursday, it was 49 and rainy. Oof. So it was we went from Tuesday, week one of the NFL season, all the way to by Thursday, it was you're deep into the playoffs. So I'm sure the coaches love that, seeing how the players, kind of adapt to the different weather conditions and think on their feet. I will say day one, you could tell that the nerves were pretty high for the players. They're playing, very stiff, very conservative. But as the week went on, the quarterback started slinging the ball more. You saw more quickness, you saw more agility, and it's just players ease into it. And then it finally culminates on Saturday with the game, which unfortunately I didn't stay for. And I deeply regret watching it on TV at home versus being there in person. But, got to go back to work. You got to pay the bills. You got to prioritize things.
Of course, I absolutely get that. I'd probably be only go for the practices too. So tell my boss I need a week off of work almost for football. She might kill me. So, so we're going to get into the nitty gritty here. We're going to talk about Dan's 4 or 5 risers and fallers today. So let's start with the negatives first, and then we're going to end on a positive note. So let's start with who are we going to start with first? Let's start with Chase Brown, Illinois running back here. You have him as a follower. He had, 1,600 yards and 10 touchdowns in 2022, but, he didn't impress you at the Senior Bowls. Tell us why.
So the one thing that you notice right away being there in person is the 2 squads practice separately. So you have the national team practice first, then you have the American team practice. For each team, there is 4 running backs. So the running backs work out with the same group all week long. So the group Chase Brown was in was him, Evan Hull at a Northwestern, Cameron Peoples at Appalachian State, and then at least on the first day, we'll talk about it more later, Roschon Johnson out of Texas. Your first initial reaction seeing these players is Chase Brown is small. On Wednesday morning, I actually had the chance to sit down with him and do a one-on-one interview. I am not a very large man. I'm about 5'10" on a good day. And Chase was kind of barely bigger than me. So you get a good sense of where these players stack up as far as, size is concerned. Now, like you already stated, Chase had a prolific career at Illinois. He actually started at Western Michigan, transferred to Illinois after his freshman year. The reason he transferred, I'm not sure if you're aware, his twin brother, Sidney Brown, played safety at Illinois. Both of them were there on at Senior Bowl week. Sidney had an amazing week of practice for the safety group, but Chase was just a little bit out of his element. He had a number of drops in the passing game. He had a couple of fumbles during drills, which I really hate to see because the drills are not full contact. So to fumble in a non-full contact drill is not great. And then his pass protection, he was just getting beaten all over the place. So I have to go back and watch more film on him because I'm still trying to figure out what happened to him. You know, we saw him with all the counting stats in his career at Illinois. He looks fast. He looks good. I don't know if just his nerves got to him and the kind of situation was like, you know, bigger than he thought it would be, but he didn't look too good. Unfortunately, the worst part was they're doing inside run drills. So on these drills, running back takes the handoff and then just hits the gap between the center and the guard. Very simple, just so people can warm up slightly.
Right.
He hits the inside gap and he gets blown up. He loses his helmet. He loses the football. He loses everything. When the dust settles, it was Sidney, his twin brother, the one who tackled him.
Yeah, thanks for making me losing my draft stock here.
A little family friendly fire at the Senior Bowl, unfortunately.
Oh, his brother is probably going to cost him a couple, or maybe a round or two at least. So that's good for him. But no, I mean, yeah, I mean, when I did my research on him, when you were telling me which players you wanted, I mean, that kind of stuck out. Him going in between the tackles, wasn't really impressed what I saw there, and pass protection, it needed a lot of work. So, you know, the fact that these things kind of showed out, and maybe it was the nerves, obviously, you know, first time being in front of a national, you probably played a bunch of national games, but national stage where people are actually watching you and looking to see what you can do at this moment. Nerves could have got to him, but yeah, those things that you mentioned, yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Those are my concerns with him too. So
yeah, it's very unfortunate because, like I said, I got the chance to talk to him, and he is like the nicest kid ever. Him and his brother are actually from Canada, and their senior year of high school, they lived in Florida with kind of like I don't know what's the word, not like a foster family, but like they were hosted at a house so they can go to Florida and play football and be in front of, you know, scouts. And like I said, he went to Western Michigan before going to Illinois to play with his brother, and he just very humble. And that's one thing I realized talking to most of the players this week. You know, we'll get into Tajay a little bit later on. They're very humble for how good they are. And their outlook on life is just like, I left those interviews feeling like I'm rooting for these guys so hard. I already told my wife if Tajay gets drafted to a team that's not the Steelers, I'll be buying his jersey like day one.
I love it. I mean, yeah, I would assume that a lot of these guys are humble. I mean, it's a great experience, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them, and getting that extra look at the Senior Bowl. I mean, that's a big thing for some of these guys, especially some seniors. Obviously, all these guys are seniors to some extent. So, I mean, getting that opportunity to, you know, be there for some extra time means a lot for them. So I'm sure, you know, having you talk to them, it meant a lot probably. So. All right, so let's move on from Chase Brown and let's go to Rashid Rice, so wide receiver out of SMU. 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns last year, 2,000 yards and 19 touchdowns over the last 2 years. But you have him as a faller. Why?
So I want to say this before we talk about any of these wide receivers today. Context is very important with events like this. When I'm talking about context, I'm mostly talking about the quarterback play. This Senior Bowl quarterback group was one of the poorest we've seen in a long, long time. Last year, we had Kenny Pickett with Malik Willis. In 2020, we had the Jalen Hurts with the Justin Herbert class. So out of the past, like I want to say 6 or 7 years, this is probably the weakest quarterback group that the Senior Bowl has seen. So when you go to evaluate these wide receivers, like I was saying on Tuesday, everyone was playing a little timid. Every quarterback checked it down. I didn't see a single quarterback throw more than 10 air yards. It was slot receiver here, running back there. And so, like I said, context is very important. I also want to mention the cornerback group that Jim Nagy brought in is amazing. The draft overall, corner might be the strongest position in this draft class. And Jim Nagy brought down some very large, very long-armed, big-bodied corners who had no problem putting hands on these receivers. And there were officials during the drills, and the flags were just flying all over the place. So I just wanted to put that out there before we start discussing any of these wide receivers, that the context of an event like this is really important to take into consideration.
Right.
That being said, Rashee Rice, he broke Emmanuel Sanders' receiving records at SMU. Prolific player. He has some great tape out there. I'm not saying he had a bad Senior Bowl. I expected more. I expected to watch practice on Tuesday and Wednesday and immediately have him stand out above and beyond the rest of this wide receiver group. He didn't have any drops. He didn't have, he wasn't poor running his routes. Just he didn't look as good as I've seen a lot of people have him near the top of this wide receiver class. So going into Mobile with those expectations, I expected him to put up and show out, and I just didn't see it. And everybody that I talked to there, because you're in the stands, and it's me, it's fantasy guys, it's NFL scouts, it's front office personnel, it's a whole mixture of people. And the common theme I heard being discussed is like, why doesn't Rice look as amazing as we expected him to look? So I am still confident he's going to receive day 2 draft capital. And I think he is going to contribute to his NFL offense his rookie year. I just think the ceiling is a little capped right now for Rashee Rice.
Right. So possibly, like, instead of him maybe taking that leap to maybe being a true wide receiver 1, he gets that more wide receiver 2-3 look kind of to him. Is that what you say?
Yeah. I actually just did a mock draft article for Dynasty Nerds for the New York Jets, and I had them selecting Rashee Rice at the end of round 3. And I said in the article that he's the type of player that he is going to sit and learn his rookie year and then contribute year 2. So I see him going to a team that is not deep at wide receiver, but could use an extra body or two. And then his rookie year, we're not going to see too much production out of him, but he's going to be a great sophomore year buy in Dynasty. He needs a year to get acclimated with an offense. He needs a year to learn how to be an NFL player. And then in year 2 and beyond, I can see him being, especially in PPR leagues, because he's going to just gobble up targets. Right. I hate the same school comp and everything, but picture Emmanuel Sanders. I don't want to say that they're the same guy, but the similarities are there.
No, I can definitely see. Yeah, I mean, I guess when I was watching my film on him. I like what I saw with the fact that you said he was a faller. I was like, well, he must have done something to just not impress enough people to be like what we saw on film compared to what you see at the Senior Bowl. Is like there's something missing there, and obviously there was something missing there. So hopefully at the combine, he can kind of rebound a little bit there, because I did like what I saw on tape there overall. I think he thought pretty just overall his size was a great weight, great. Everything he did was just good. It wasn't super great, but it was all really good. I didn't see too many flaws in his game. So I was surprised, because when I was listening to a lot of other podcasts about the Senior Bowl, it was mixed reviews. People were like, oh, we're just down on Rice now. Or people said, you know what? He had a bad week, but I still really like this kid. So I was glad that you were going to talk about, because I know I messaged you. I was like, can you talk about Rice? I was like, wait, you just said you're talking about Rice. Well, good. So
yeah, so I would say Chase Brown was definitely a faller for me. And then Rashee Rice, I would say, just didn't meet expectations. But like you were saying, I feel like he's going to be the type of player where he's good at everything, master of none type of guy. He's like a Jarvis Landry almost. Jarvis Landry, he wasn't the most athletic guy. He had that 1 year at Miami with Tannehill where he had amazing counting stats, but he was just you could always put him in. Just, you're getting wide receiver 2 production out of him. I'm not saying Rashee Rice is going to be a wide receiver 2 for fantasy, but he's that molded player where Not a lot of highlight catches. He's not going to lead the league in targets or receptions, but he is just a solid contributor to both your fantasy team and then whatever NFL team that is lucky enough to draft him.
I like the comparison, definitely, as a Dolphins fan. So Jarvis Landry a little bit. So, all right. So let's get over to all the quarterbacks as fallers in this Senior Bowl, or as you started talking about them recently there. I mean, is anyone obviously in particular that stuck out that was just like, he ruined his draft stock this weekend?
Yeah, so the quarterbacks, like I already said, the quarterback play was the poorest it's been in a while. Just so the audience knows, let me just run through the list of quarterbacks that were there. So we had Clayton Tune out of Houston, big-armed, like type of toolsy guy. We have Tyson Bagent, who was from Shepherd, a D2 school in West Virginia. I've heard the last D2 quarterback that was at the Senior Bowl, but you have to go back pretty far. Fun fact, his father is a world champion arm wrestler.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Tyson, he's very big armed. I actually like him being drafted maybe like the 6th or 7th as a developmental type of guy. We had Malik Cunningham, the Louisville quarterback there. He was called up like last second. He only got the invite 4 days before the event started. A lot of Lamar Jackson comps because people love the helmet scout, but I hate to say it, like his game does remind me a little bit of Lamar Jackson. We had Max Duggan, the TCU quarterback, one of the Heisman finalists from this year. Jaron Hall, BYU quarterback, mobile, the big guy. Jake Hayner from Fresno State. He actually broke both David and Derek Carr's passing records in his time at Fresno State. And then Hendon Hooker was there, the Tennessee quarterback. He wasn't practicing or anything. He was just there for interviews and stuff like that. He's still recovering from the ACL injury he suffered towards the tail end of the college football season. So that's all the quarterbacks that were there. Some names you might recognize, some names might be new to you. It just left a lot to be desired. I think in my write-up, I have Hayner, Hall, and Duggan are like developmental backup type guys that are going to go early on day 3. Clayton Tune, I don't really see him making any splashes in the league. Malik Cunningham, somebody's going to take a flyer on towards the end of the draft. Once again, I hate to do comps, but if the Ravens re-sign Lamar and they don't have Tyler Huntley there, I would love to see them bring in Malik as a backup. Just keep the offense the same if something happens to Lamar. And then Tyson was probably my favorite just because it was impossible to find any tape on him going into the event. And his arm was a lot bigger than I was expecting. I think somebody's going to take a flyer on him in the 7th, try to develop him into a backup, maybe get a couple spot starts in year 3 or year 4. But these guys just didn't, like I was saying before, we've had in the past at the Senior Bowl, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Kenny Pickett, like Baker Mayfield,
right?
Guys going top half of the first round. And like I just said, I don't see these guys. If one of them goes on day 2, I will honestly be shocked, to tell you the truth. So the quarterbacks, a lot to be desired.
Yeah, that's a lot of what I heard about it. Just no one really impressed. I think Tyson was the one that, if anything, people were like, wow, they opened their eyes to something there. Like, oh wow, compared to how bad it was, he performed well enough as the D2 guy to like, oh wow, like surprising people. So I heard that already. I know I had an article put out right before you went down there. Max Duggan thought, watch out for him to see if he can actually take that step. Obviously didn't. There was a reason why he didn't have the starting job going into the season. Yeah, definitely a major disappointment. I probably agree with you. I don't see any of these guys probably being a day 2 pick. And probably won't see many of them picked probably 6th round or later at best. That's the way I kind of see it. So I'm still doing my film on the quarterbacks, but I mean, there's a gap. There's a big gap between these guys somewhere. So
yeah. Actually, in my rankings article for Dynasty Nerds, I put Hooker at the top, even though he didn't play. I was like, he didn't play, but I'm confident even with one leg, he'd go out there and look pretty better than these guys.
Probably would have looked. We probably would have been talking more about Hooker if he was healthy out there. Probably that's how bad they were. So, All right, let's get over to the last faller of the night, Chris Rodriguez Jr. out of Kentucky, running back. Chris had 900 yards and 6 touchdowns. He was suspended for the first 4 games of the season, but did have 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns in 2021 during Kentucky's big season there. But why is he a follow to you?
Stiff, very, very stiff. He didn't have a lot of lateral agility, quickness. He didn't look fluid. He just, I hate to use one word to describe a play and write them off, but he just looked very stiff. I think the next level, he would have a job like a rotational depth guy who can be brought in goal line, short yardage type of situations. But even then, he doesn't have his size isn't anything to write home about. He's came in at 5'11", 224. I don't know. If you're not big enough to be a goal line back and you're not agile enough to be a pass catching or a course back, especially for fantasy, not too much appeal there.
You look when I was doing film review on him, he looked like a linebacker just out there, just like
yes.
If you give him a straight line, he's good. He's just gonna roll over people. But if you make him do anything creative in terms of a runner, you're asking way too much out of him. He's like a Damian Harris, poor man's Damian Harris to me. That's what I saw when I first was like, oh, that's Damian Harris out there, but worse.
Yeah, like I said earlier, his group was Kenny McIntosh, him, Tajay Spears, and Eric Gray. And I mean, we'll get to Tajay in a little bit, but Eric Gray, he looks super fluid. It's like you'd have 3 guys that oh, so good. And then Chris Rodriguez would come by and you're like, oh, so not good.
Yeah, no, that makes sense with him. I was looking, I was like, oh man, this guy's he's going to be tough if he has to have a job where he's just a goal line guy or a short yard guy. But again, there's roles out there for those guys, but we'll see if that's actually the case. But obviously, it didn't help that he needs to probably make some kind of big performance at the combine to make his case.
Yeah, the combine will be very important for him.
Yes, or he is not looking like he might be a drafted guy, but we'll see. All right, enough with the bad stuff here. Let's get into some positive stuff, some risers. Tajay Spears out of Tulane, running back, 1,500 yards, 19 touchdowns, 22 receptions in 2022. Obviously, we all know, but why is he a big riser for you?
I love Tajay Spears. I'll just say it. He's going to be my guy this draft cycle. He won right away on Monday on day one. Most people were saying oh, he probably plays at 185, 190. He weighed in at 204, which was a statement weight for people because a lot of people were worried that he was going to be a small pass catching running back, and to come in at that size really set the tone for what the week would be like. And then you just watch him out there. He's fluid. He knows how to run. The best part was, so I was describing those inside run drills before.
Right.
They're not full speed. They're 90% speed. The other important thing is they're not supposed to be full contact. Obviously, I told you Chase got lit up by Sydney on that one. So the way those drills work is it's basically two-hand touch football. Because there's a full officiating crew during this whole practice. So, running back receives the handoff. He finds the hole in the middle, maybe cuts once. If a linebacker or defensive lineman, they get a hand on him, the ref blows the play dead. There was at least 3 times where Tajay hit the hole, made a move lightning fast, and was gone to the end zone. And the referee never blew the whistle because nobody laid a hand on him. Just amazing. And then I'm sure you've seen the whip route video by this point.
Yes.
Yeah. Literally teleported, had the linebacker in roller skates. He just looks so electric. And then, so one concern that's going to be brought up about Spears in the pre-draft cycle, especially when big media starts to talk about these players, is he suffered an ACL injury in, I believe that was early 2020. Yes. Which he had to have surgery for, and he fully rehabbed, as you can see from how he looks on the field. Cool. But I had a chance to sit down with him on Wednesday and talk to him for a little bit. One, I asked him how the knee was feeling, and he said, "Perfect. Did you watch practice yesterday?" Listen, I'm just trying to check off my boxes of questions here, okay? Yes, I did see practice. I was very impressed. But then I asked him, I was like, listen, I know that ACLs are tough. I know a lot of people during the rehab process have problems trusting their knee and planting, and they have problems trusting their stability. I was like, how did rehab affect you? And like, how has that molded you as a player now? And he, most humble guy in the world, he's like, it changed my outlook on life. He's like, I appreciate everything right now. He's like, I appreciate every snap, every rep, every practice, every game, because I know that might be my last one. I was like, wow, this kid's 21 years old and he like really gets it. No. So, and then pass protection, catching, he just did it all week. And he was the talk of the Senior Bowl. Anybody you would talk to, and then the cool thing is, so big draft media like PFF and all those guys, they don't really highlight the running back position too much because, running backs don't matter, that whole mantra. And even they were talking about Tajay Spears. So, if those guys are talking about a running back, he's got to be, really killing it.
No, I mean, I definitely, I liked what I saw on tape. I mean, just dynamic, amazing runner. I mean, just get the ball in his hands and it's game over a lot of times. So, hearing that all week saying that, like, oh, he just stood out. I'm like, well, that's going to help put me in a nice place for Tajay Spears. I want to have him this coming season here. And hopefully he sticks to a team where they actually use him in the right way. Kind of reminds me slightly of like a DeAndre Swift kind of player to me personally, just the dynamic running ability that he has. So I love that you have him as a riser here. So,
and I do have to say, I did talk to a scout at the bar one night who will remain anonymous.
Of course.
Tajay Spears is going in the 3rd round. People have to be ready for that. He's going to be a 3rd round selection, which for fantasy purposes, we love.
I wouldn't be surprised whatever team that is, he ends up as a late first round pick, that's for sure. So I'm waiting for that to happen next. So in fantasy rookie drafts, obviously. So I'm excited for that. All right, let's get over to the next one. All right, let's go to a tight end here. Luke Musgrave, Oregon State tight end. Obviously didn't have a big 2022 season. ACL tear in week 3. Knee injury, not ACL. Knee injury in week 3. 169 yards and a touchdown in 2 games for a tight end, which is pretty interesting, just eye-popping for just 2 games. So obviously, looks like he's ready to go if he's a riser for you. So tell us why.
Yeah, so like you said, Luke was dealing with a knee injury and missed a large portion of 2022. Before I went to the Senior Bowl, I like to keep my hand on the pulse of what the mock draft community is currently doing. And when I say that, I mean like, Daniel Jeremiah, Bucky Brooks, Tom McShay, like the big names, respect to the YouTube grinders out there. But if you're putting a guy in the top 15, it's not moving the needle for me. But if I hear it from one of the big names, so I was hearing a lot of Luke Musgrave as a 1st rounder. So I went into Mobile with like that in the back of my head, like, okay, I need to make sure to watch this kid because if these guys are calling him a 1st rounder, then he's going to impress. Day 1 wasn't that impressive. He didn't really show up or show out. And I was like, all right, I don't see it. Luckily enough, I was able to talk to him Wednesday morning, and I didn't ask this question, but somebody else did. They're like, can you talk to us a little bit about the recovery from your injury? Where are you at with that? And he was very honest. He said, I was out of shape yesterday. He said, I rehabbed, I recovered, I am in shape. I'm not in football shape. And he said, the only way to get into football shape is, guess what? By playing football. And yesterday was the first time I played football. He's like, so I'm still working on the football shape part. And I was like, kudos for being, brutally honest around, so many scouts and media. And let's just say day 2 and day 3, he changed everything. He's making catches all over the field, hauling in touchdowns. And I remember sitting in the stands saying, all right, I guess Luke is finally in football shape. So now obviously tight ends drafted in the 1st round can be very hit or miss for fantasy football. Right. You got your OJ Howards, your Evan Ingrams, David Njoku kind of. Yeah. But then you also got like your TJ Hawkinsons. So it's a mixed bag, but first round draft capital is not a knock on a player. You know, he's
Right.
going to be on the field year one. You know, he's getting the snaps. Like, even if he doesn't produce for dynasty purposes, he's going to hold his value after his rookie year. You know, just because like people always just refer to first round draft capital. Team's not going to move on from him. So I would love to see him taken in the first round. I think he can make a big difference for his NFL team. And he is a true pass catching tight end. So he will be very, very fantasy relevant this year.
Yeah, no, I from what I was able to find on him, again, there wasn't too much film on him, obviously, because he didn't play. He only played, I think it's like 13 games in his career, if I'm not mistaken. I had that stat, I think. Yeah, he had 13 starts. So there's not a ton of film that I could get on him. But for what I was able to watch, I mean, just a very, very good pass catching tight end here. Kind of reminded me somewhat of a Greg Dulcich. So if Greg Dulcich went in round one with his pass catching ability, I feel like that's what you could have expected for what Luke Musgrave is going to be doing now. Like, you're going to want that kind of tight end who can catch the ball and do things with the ball in his hands once he gets it. So I'm glad that he's looking better, because I do like him a lot from what I've seen. All right, let's head over to a wide receiver now. Wide receiver now. Jayden Reed. This was one guy that I was telling people to watch out for before the Senior Bowl. Again, not a big 2022, just 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. But in 2021, he did have over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. Why is Reed a riser to you?
He looks like the man. He was just dominating all week. So I'm going to refer to this again. It's kind of a common theme from the Senior Bowl, but the quarterback play was pretty poor, and the defensive backs were very, very good. And Reed just had them. He had them twisting and turning, and they couldn't keep up with him. He was able to gain separation like first 3 steps, which is something you love to see for a wide receiver. You know, because a lot of guys, like, if they get a corner playing press man coverage on them, they can't create that separation right away. And you know, with modern NFL blitz packages and the size that these edge rushers have nowadays, offenses are looking for those guys that are going to get open fast and be a safety net for the quarterback, who has to get the ball out in 3 seconds or less. So Jayden Reed was consistently getting open with 3 steps, which will be huge when it comes to his play at the very next level. I've been hearing, I hate comps that are like ceiling comps, but the only comp I've heard for Jayden Reed is Antonio Brown.
Oh, wow.
I'm just throwing it out there. Not saying he's going to be Antonio Brown, but whenever I hear people talking comps for Jayden Reed, the only name that comes up is Antonio Brown. Like, listen, they're both Michigan men, but they're both amazing. So
yeah.
I don't know. Jayden Reed is a big riser for me. He just looked really, really good that week.
Yeah, no, I love that. I was hoping that he would show out, and he did, obviously. I mean, when I'm looking at back and looking at my notes, like, well, what did I not like about it? There's very few things I didn't see as a concern. Everything was a positive. You know, everything down to the fact that when he comes off the line, at the point of catch, when he has the ball in his hand, how he's using the offense. I mean, they use them in different ways. Very excited to see what he's able to do. And obviously, I don't hate the Antonio Brown comp too. So if that comes to be true, it's going to be a really good to have him in any kind of fantasy format. So love the Reed riser right there. Let's see. You have another wide receiver, Tank Dell, wide receiver from Houston, 1,300, almost 1,400 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2021, 2,700 yards over the last 2 years. Why is he a riser for you?
All right, so it's funny. I was just looking at the measurements. They have him listed as Tank Dell also. So his name's Nathaniel. Nathaniel Tank Dell. Tank is his nickname. It is quite the ironic moniker because the man weighs in at 163 pounds with the height of 5 foot and 8 inches. So he's tiny, but his wingspan, my man has a 6 foot wingspan. He's got more in his arms than he does in his entire body, and he knows how to use them. He is a prolific hands catcher who uses that wingspan to increase his catch radius. And they were running drills with the jugs machine on the sideline, and they kind of had it set up so it was like, up top, down low, up top, like, just kind of testing out their hands. Right. And Dale was just like, boom, 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 all over the place, just catching everything. So the combine is going to be very important for Tank Dell. With a weight like that, he's going to have to run very, very fast to justify it. Because the thing is, he's listed at 163 right now. I mean, player like that is going to shed weight in the season, so he's going to be playing at 158 maybe, and that's Tutu Atwell territory, and Tutu Atwell is not somebody I'm looking to add to my dynasty roster right now. So he had a very impressive Senior Bowl. A lot of scouts I talked to said late day 2 for draft capital for him, which would put him in the conversation of talking about him as a top 10 wide receiver in this draft class.
Yeah, no, like I said, there's a lot to like about him. His small frame really concerns me as to be more of like a gadget player than actually a true, stepping stone franchise wide receiver. Like, I don't see that in his future personally. And I feel like he's going to have that Tutu Atwell, maybe somewhat of like a Kadarius Toney, where he's just not used in different ways, but just not consistent enough for me. I like that he's a riser because I would like to see more out of him. Like I said, the combine is going to be a major thing for him, obviously, if he can run fast enough, because like you mentioned so many times, like NFL teams want players who can get open and move very, very quickly. So, I like that he's a riser. We'll see if he can actually make it to the next level. I have my concerns, but
I will say smaller wide receivers, concern for them is press man coverage. A big corner gets hands on these guys, and they're not getting out of that. And like I was saying with Reed, he can win in the first 3 steps. So if he can beat press man coverage, he'll be good to go. That's going to be his hurdle to overcome at the next level. Is a good strong corner that can get up and put hands on him.
Oh, I agree with you. Like when I was watching film, it was like if he didn't get touched, the man's gone. You're not catching him. Yeah. But as soon as someone puts a hand on him and he puts him off his route, he just did not look like this. He just not get open the same way. So that's going to be a big test for him. So we'll have to wait and see on that. So, all right. And then last but not least, Roschon Johnson, Texas running back, 500 yards and 5 touchdowns this past season here. 3 of his 4 seasons, at least 500 yards. Clearly, he was a backup. That's why he's listed only at 500 yards. He was Deja Robinson's backup here for 3 years. So tell us why Johnson is rising for you, Dan.
So I referenced it earlier that I would talk more about Roschon at this point. I have to tell the story of the whole week for Roschon. Roschon broke his hand on the first day of practice. He played through it the entire practice and did not drop a single pass. After practice,
he didn't play. I thought he was just done for the time. Wow, I did not know that.
He played an entire practice with a broken hand and still looked like the best running back on his team. After practice, obviously his agent was like, "Hey, Roschon, we're gonna shut it down. You're done for the week." And he like wanted to keep playing, but everyone's like, "Listen, man, you gotta think about yourself here. You gotta think about what's coming up." So, like you referred to, Roschon was behind Bijan for most of his college career. Roschon was actually recruited to Texas as a quarterback. He was I believe, 4-star quarterback recruit. When he got to Texas, it was the same time that Sam Ehlinger was there. And he quickly realized, I'm not going to beat this guy at the quarterback position. Let me just move to running back. So he's only been playing the running back position for the past 4 years or so. And being behind Bijan, it's very hard to get yourself in front of the limelight.
Right.
This event was his limelight where he was the main guy out there, and he looked amazing. He was in the group, like I said, with Chase Brown, Evan Hull, and Cameron Peoples. Right. And it just standing next to the 3 of them, he just looked like an NFL running back, just his body composition, his height, his weight, everything. He actually measured in at 6 foot and 225 pounds, which is like the perfect size for an NFL running back.
3 down.
And I think teams are also going to see his backup status at Texas as a positive. He doesn't have a lot of wear and tear. Like you said, he only had 500 yards each of the last 4 seasons. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I got to imagine it's less than 80 carries per year. And I did talk to a scout down there, and he gave me a little soundbite, and he said, don't be surprised at how closely Roshan and Bijan are drafted. Don't be surprised when Bijan goes in the first and then Roshan goes to the top of the second.
Oh, God.
So the NFL is already all over the kid. They already know the talent's there. We just didn't get to see it in college, And this is one of those players whereby, listening to this podcast this time of year, having your pulse on the community this time of year will put you onto these types of players because they don't have a highlight reel package to go watch on YouTube. Just drop bombs or whatever it is. Production doesn't have a mixtape for Roshan Johnson. But if you go to events like this, the Senior Bowl, and you see him in person, you say that guy is going to be a difference maker at the next level. I mean, I don't want to give away my whole process, but I have him high.
Oh, no. I mean,
very high in my running back rankings.
Believe me, I get it. Out of the 4 running backs, obviously, he's currently number 1 in terms of that sense there for me personally. I mean, when I was watching, I was like, this man looks like a true featured running back that you can run on all 3 downs. I mean, he looked like an NFL running back just running from what I was able to watch, the limited carries that he showed us. Like, this man can play all 3 downs. He can get past, linebackers, get past cornerbacks. He can get out of the backfield any which way, down the middle, off to the side, whatever it may be. And the fact that you're getting a potential star running back with probably less tread than any other running back that you would consider a star. I mean, it's like thinking like Michael Turner back in the day, and it's like, you're getting a star running back you traded for Atlanta, and he doesn't have all the tread, so you're going to work him for the next 4 years. And I think that's what NFL teams might be able to really get at. Johnson is an elite production, like straight off like what we saw out of Zeke the first 4 years was just pure dominance.
Yep. And he was also a 4-year captain at Texas, and he did graduate with his degree. He's going to interview very well as well. He's going to, we think, so I'm high on him right now, and we're talking about him right now. You just watch and wait. After the combine, his name is going to be all over the place because somebody I was talking to in the stands talked to his agent, and they're like, so how fast is Roshan running? The agent's like, fast, very, very, very fast. So he's going to show out the combine and blow people out of the water. You watch Good Morning Football, like every media outlet's going to talk about Roshan when the combine's over.
This is the time to unfortunately you can't do your rookie draft now. I would draft him right now everywhere I could, but
I know. And then all the Devy leagues I play in, the guys are too smart. They're not going to trade me Roshan.
I probably wouldn't trade him away either. Oh, God. All right. Well, Dan, is there anyone else you want to quickly mention real quick before we end tonight's show?
No, I think that was it for most of the risers and the fallers, unfortunately. There's a lot of players there. I think it's like 30-something fantasy relevant players that I had ranked. Andre Yosifis, the Princeton wide receiver, is a good name to watch out for going to the combine. He's a track guy, so he's probably going to run very, very fast. At an Ivy League school, like his production's not there, the tape's not there, but he's going to run quick at the combine, so that's a name to watch out for. Let me just think real fast if there's anybody else that I want to mention. Oh, and then Kenny McIntosh, the Georgia running back. He is the type of kid who's played long enough in a high-profile SEC school that the NFL community is just going to love drafting him just to have a professional running back from year one. He pass catch, pass protection. He kind of does everything. So don't be surprised if Kenny McIntosh gets his name called on day 2 of the NFL draft as well.
There'll be a lot of running backs early on. This is a great class for running backs. So, Dan, man, I appreciate you jumping on to do this tonight. We're going to see a lot of Dan's face probably over the next few months here now. He'll be with us on Monday for our next normal Dynasty podcast that we're doing. And then obviously we're going to do some special things in the next month. We'll be doing some things. We'll talk more about that later, but you will see Dan's face from time to time through this draft process. So Dan, if there's anything you want to do, say, I know, we work together over at Dynasty Nerds, so the floor is yours if you got some things going on. So I know you do.
Yeah. So you can find me over at Twitter at DanT_NFL. Series that we're actually currently working on together right now is our Draft Nerd series. It's probably the highlight of my year. We take every team in the NFL. We do a full 7-round mock draft for every team, try to fill some needs, try to fill some holes, break it down from a fantasy perspective. It's good to get a look on the draft class in the eyes of how NFL rosters may be looking at it. So we're doing about 2 or 3 a week over at Dynasty Nerds. I know I dropped the Jets one today. I got the Rams one down the pipeline. So just keep an eye out for that. We got all our rookie profiles dropping at Dynasty Nerds. A lot of people say like, oh, Super Bowl football season's ending, this or that. I don't know what they're talking about. My calendar is more full than it's ever been. So, so find me on Twitter. DMs are always open. I love talking ball. I love talking craft beer. I'm open for anything.
Absolutely love it. And again, we'll be seeing Dan's face over on Monday night at 5:30 once again, guys. So again, we're going to be doing special podcasts like this throughout the rest of the off season here. Just a little something extra outside of the normal that we do give you already. Again, always, go follow us over on Twitter at Coaches Fantasy, our Instagram, over on Facebook, like us. If you want to join our Discord, it is down below. Just click on the link, join our Discord chat there. If you also want to join the Dynasty GM, highly recommend it. Use the promo code Coach. It's a really cool tool to use for your Dynasty teams and your outlook on your league in general sense. It's a lot of cool things, and they're going to be having an app like any day now, I'm pretty sure. So you definitely want to take advantage of that now. Until next time, guys, we'll be back on Monday talking Dynasty once again. Until then, guys, have a good one.